On Tuesday, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced in uncharacteristically Trumpish language that the EU and India had finalised the mother of all deals, creating a free trade zone covering some 2 billion people. This is a remarkable turnaround, given that, only a couple of years ago, it looked like this deal, which has been nearly 2 decades in the making, was essentially dead in the water. So in this video, we thought we'd take a look at what's actually in this new deal, and what it means for EU-India relations going forward. We're in the process of clearing out our store, so we're running a fire sale right now. Using code FIRESALE, you can get 40% off all of our posters, notebooks, calendars, magnets, keyrings, Brexit the colouring book, the lot. That offer ends very soon, so click the link in the description for more. So, let's start with a bit of context about how the EU actually got here. We covered some of this in our video anticipating the trade deal a couple of weeks ago, but for any new viewers, discussions on this free trade agreement between the EU and India have actually been happening on and off since 2007. Negotiations hit a wall in 2013 when India, which produced more than half of the developing world's generic drugs back then, decided that it didn't want to sign up to the EU's drug patent rules. Talks were only formally restarted nearly a decade later in June 2022, reflecting a broader re-embrace of free trade principles in both Europe and India. In Europe, Putin's invasion of Ukraine spurred interest within the EU about diversifying its trading relationships in order to make the European economy more resilient to external shocks. While in India, which has traditionally been a relatively closed economy, there was a post-pandemic push towards economic liberalization, as evidenced by the flurry of new free trade agreements that India has signed in just the last couple of years, including deals with Mauritius, the UAE, Australia, the UK, New Zealand, and Oman. India even signed a free trade agreement with the European Free Trade Association states, Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland in 2024, which came into force a couple of months ago and probably played a part in rejuvenating trade negotiations with the EU. Negotiations progressed steadily in 2023 and 2024, but things accelerated dramatically with the return of Trump, who imposed a 15% tariff on the EU and a 50% tariff on India. These tariffs were bad news for both the Indian and European economies, given that the US is, or at least was before Trump's tariffs, the largest export market for both India and the EU. According to data from 2024, for instance, India exported $88 billion worth of stuff to the US, more than twice what it exported to any other individual country, while the EU exported over 500 billion euros worth of stuff, more than twice what it exported to China. Trump's tariffs thus partly deprived both India and the EU of access to their largest export market, pushing European and Indian exports to look for new markets. This gave both sides added impetus to finalise the trade deal, given that it will provide both Indian and European exporters with new markets to help offset the loss of access to the American market. It also builds on existing momentum. EU-India trade has grown rapidly in recent years, and the Indian government statistics suggest that the EU is now India's largest trading partner in goods, i.e. excluding services, with bilateral trade totaling $136 billion last year, roughly double what it was a decade ago. There was also a political element at play. Both India and the EU wanted to prove that, if the Trump administration wants to tear up America's existing network of allies, they'll always be able to find new allies, and re-emphasize their shared commitment to free trade in the face of the Trump-led turn to protectionism. Things finally came to a head on Tuesday, when during her visit to India, von der Leyen announced that the two sides had concluded a deal that will create a free trade zone of 2 billion people, and promised to, quote, grow the EU-India strategic relationship to be even stronger. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was similarly bullish, describing the deal as historic and India's biggest free trade agreement. So, what's actually in the deal? Well, the first thing to say is we don't yet have the full text, and the deal still has to be both legally vetted and ratified by the respective parliaments, which might force some changes. Nonetheless, as things stand, the broad outlines of the deal seem to be that both sides are going to draw down their existing tariffs. The EU will cut tariffs on 99.5% of goods imported from India over 7 years, with tariffs to be cut to zero on textile products, chemicals, and base metals. Similarly, India has apparently agreed to eliminate or reduce tariffs on 96.6% of goods imported from the EU, although tariffs on certain politically sensitive agricultural products, including beef, chicken, rice, and sugar, will remain. Significantly, tariffs on cars, which are the EU's biggest single export, and currently face tariffs as high as 110% in India, would see their tariff cut to 10% over 5 years, with a quota of 250,000 vehicles. That's 6 times larger than the 37,000 unit quota India granted the UK in a deal they signed last July, although European cars priced below €15,000 will apparently face higher tariffs. There are also a number of regulatory provisions intended to facilitate better trade in services, and the EU claims that this deal gives European companies better market access than any of India's other trade deals. All in all, the EU predicts that this will double European exports to India by 2032. Now, at first glance, it might look like the EU got a better deal than India did here, given that the EU had lower tariffs to begin with. For context, according to WTO data from 2023, India had a trade-weighted average tariff of 12%, with tariffs above 100% on lots of agricultural products, and around 30% for most manufactured goods. This is far higher than not just the EU, which has a trade-weighted average of about 2.8%, but other similar economies like China, Mexico, and Brazil, which all have trade-weighted averages of between 3 and 7%. However, while it's probably true that the EU did better out of the tariff drawdown, India was also able to negotiate a new so-called mobility pact, something that India has long pushed for, but the EU has previously resisted, which will make it easier for Indian students and skilled professionals to obtain short-term visas in the EU. As a final thing, while this deal, like most other trade deals, will probably have a relatively minimal impact on aggregate GDP, at least in the short term, it should also be understood as a sort of building block towards a deeper EU-India relationship. There's plenty of room to expand upon the trade deal as it stands, and the two sides are separately advancing talks on security cooperation, climate action, and investment rules. If these talks go well, they could pave the way for a genuine and mutually beneficial deepening of the EU-India relationship. Now, if you stuck around this long, chances are you're passionate about learning and bettering yourself through knowledge, just like us. You're obviously a thinker, and Brilliant is the perfect learning platform to unlock your full potential. That's because Brilliant pushes you to excel in maths and computer science with visual interactive problem solving and personalized experience. Their website and app is designed to be highly effective, offering the perfect mix of interactive problems, motivating challenges, and encouragement to keep you moving forward. Here you can build genuine understanding and reach serious learning goals. On Brilliant, you'll click with concepts you used to struggle with. Their ever-expanding library covers everything from timeless topics in maths and science to cutting-edge concepts in AI, quantum, and beyond. Wherever you are on your learning journey, Brilliant will start you at the perfect level to grow and achieve your goals at your own pace, with each course being crafted by an award-winning team of teachers, researchers, and professors from MIT, Harvard, Stanford, Caltech, Google, and more. So if you want to start learning with confidence and become an even better problem solver, then you can try Brilliant for free for a full 30 days. Just go to brilliant.org/TLDR, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description. Brilliant is also giving our viewers 20% off their annual premium subscription, which gives you unlimited daily access to everything on Brilliant.